So moving on to the next topic in the cybersecurity track, we're looking at the applications of blockchain, right? So there's a huge amount of talk at every different conference all over the place about blockchains, relationships to cryptocurrencies, ICOs, and different types of applications. Here for the cybersecurity track with Adara Ventures, we've decided to focus in on looking at future applications within the enterprise space of the blockchain technology itself. And this disruptive and new technology hails huge transparency and huge security, essentially a technology that's unhackable. So surely there's going to be a lot of very interesting applications in the enterprise space in terms of making enterprise software applications and operations more secure. We're thrilled to have the participants of the next panel, very varied profiles, very experienced individuals in this space. The panel is going to be led by Leonard Board, who's a serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Tokenizo, which is an end-to-end platform for securitization of private assets. We also have Olga Blanco Poves, who's the blockchain lead at IBM for Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Greece. We're thrilled to have Adam Draper, all the way in from Silicon Valley, who's founder of Boost VC, one of the very first early-stage firms and accelerator programs investing in blockchain technologies. And also Alex Puig, who's CTO at Calum Labs, which is a blockchain development agency company for enterprise applications, and also the founder of Elastria, which is the first nationwide alliance for blockchain technologies that are looking for a unique protocol for different enterprise applications in Spain. So without further ado, please give me a warm welcome to stage for our next participants. Thanks, guys. Great, thanks.
Here, I'll sit here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
There you go. Okay, we're awake. We're awake. Well, we have a very exciting panel this morning. I think it brings us many perspectives, not only from the VC perspective, but from an organizational perspective, and then from a corporate perspective. So the subject matter is highly technical. Let's see if we can waddle through it and make everybody a little bit smarter after we have this conversation. So let me start by saying that. Let me start by getting rid of the water. So how important is cybersecurity? And I think a way to frame it is that IBM did a study in 2017 in which they interviewed 3,000 C-level executives. And 56%, no, 33% said that they were focusing on blockchain.
Was it just their executives?
Is it? No. I don't think IBM has 3,000 C-level executives, but more or less.
Perhaps more.
But 56% of these C-level executives said that they wanted to make improvements on fraud and cybercrime.
Against or?
In favor. In favor of reducing it.
Every time I speak about anti-money laundering, it's like, do you want money laundering? Or
Are you pro?
Oh, yeah. I never have it.
So, and why is cybercrime such a big thing? Well, in 2000, there's a CNBC report that reports that in 2017, it was $600 billion. Almost 1% of global GDP was related to cybercrime. So, without further ado, we've put some questions together. We've discussed them with the panel. We'll start with the first one. And feel free to jump in. And actually, if everybody wants to, feel free to jump in often. Okay, so number one, how have corporate views changed towards blockchain in recent years? Olga, why don't you start?
Okay. Well, I think that blockchain is changing the way things are done, also in business. So corporations, they have been during the, I would say, last years, trying to understand how blockchain works and how blockchain can help them to improve the business or to improve the processes. The main change is that blockchain means to work with other parts. Means to work in a consortium, means to work in a network, means to work with third parties, and to make an agreement between all the parts. I think this is the change that corporations are taking more time to assimilate, because it's not easy to sometimes to take decisions in your own business. So if you have to take decisions with many of your sometimes competitors, it's even more difficult. So I think this is something that is changing the way things are done.
So 6 years ago, I invested in a company called Coinbase. And what Brian Armstrong said during the first pitch, he was the CEO of Coinbase. He said, at some point, the world's going to be on one financial infrastructure. And that statement has really been the thing that has driven me over the last 6 years to invest in 100+ crypto or Bitcoin or blockchain-related startups.
You say Bitcoin.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Am I allowed?
You're not allowed. No,
You're not allowed.
You're not allowed.
Because were those on the guidelines? The blockchain thing drives me nuts. You want to know what happened was Bitcoin is the thing, and then all the corporations were like, we can't say the word Bitcoin. So
You say it 3 times, the world stops.
Yeah. Voldemort appears. But okay. Now, if you think about what that statement means is what we're trying to do is build bridges. We're trying to connect the world's financial ecosystems. And by doing so, we created the most secure system that's ever, supercomputer that's ever existed. And that captivated the imaginations of corporations and enterprises, which led them to create groups of people internally that innovated, which had never happened in an enterprise before. I'm kidding, but sort of. But it gave them a reason to innovate. It gave them a group to really make finance or security sexy again. Well, again, I don't know if it ever was. Now it is. It's sexy now. And so that, like, I'd say the thing that how it's evolved in the enterprise is that, well, Bitcoin is a less curse word now, I actually think. So that's one thing. But it's also just like very welcomed. Like that is the change over the last 6 years. It was laughed at for a long time. And
Misunderstood?
Then, it was
for a long time.
misunderstood.
Yeah.
That's that'll be my biography. But that's what big blockchain. I'm gonna say Bitcoin a lot. Just I apologize. It's habit. It's not that this panel's about blockchain, which is Bitcoin. So that's how I feel. I feel that the enterprises have
evolved.
accepted it, and it's evolving. Like that's exciting.
Alex, you work all the time with...
But 6 years ago, I was just a funny, delusional kind of tech guy. Nobody ever listened to me. And it was like, oh, look at this guy. He's funny. He's speaking about Bitcoin? What that? Yeah. And now they pay me a lot of money. So that's probably...
That's the biggest change.
the biggest change. And they listen to me and they ask me, like, well, what's going on?
What should I do?
But probably, I think the biggest change I have seen in corporate, it's yes, blockchain, but not really about blockchain. It's about open source. 6 years ago, no way a big company could like even launch an open source initiative. It's like I've been speaking with many of these big companies, like a Big Bang, and I told them, okay, we can do it open source. And probably he's still laughing at me, like, and now it's like, okay, then maybe we can use and think about this big change. So
Alex, being that you work, I'm going to follow through with your point, is that being that you work with corporates and that they are...
But I'm a good guy.
and that they're hiring your services, how can the blockchain make corporate enterprise systems more secure?
It can't.
It cannot. Adam, how about you?
No, it can actually, but probably it's a change of mentality. Basically, most of these big companies I work with, they have some assets. It can be money, it can be cars, it can be...
Factories.
Whatever, they have assets. And basically, they have their own databases, they have all of their systems, and basically they are trying to protect everything. So basically, the big change is like, okay, these assets that you are supposed to protect, maybe you can put them on the blockchain in a public space, and that changes everything. And then once you put it there, it's not up to you, it's up to your clients to keep it safe.
But how does the blockchain make the corporate enterprise more secure? I mean, there are a couple of things in terms of denial of service attacks. There's other things like public key infrastructure, certificates of authority. These are all centralized, right? Through the DNS names. You know, once you decentralize those, that architecture, it becomes more secure. Maybe Olga can add a comment here.
Well, I think that blockchain, the philosophy of blockchain or how blockchain works, make it more difficult to be attacked. But it doesn't mean that if you have blockchain, everything is safe, because
No,
when
not
you,
everything, but everything that you decentralize becomes safer. Is that a
Safer,
fair statement,
yeah.
Adam? Yeah?
But most of the things we decentralize, we do a lot of projects, and probably blockchain is 20% of the project, 30%.
Yeah,
So we
that's-
decentralize assets. We specialize on decentralizing identity, so data gets decentralized. But then it doesn't mean that you have like a mobile application that it has to be secure anyway. So,
Yeah.
but once again, if it comes to open source, the good thing is like many, for example, last year, there's a lot of companies building the same platform, and basically they are not building, they are using an Ethereum one, so it's open source once again. But it's like everyone collaborating.
Yeah, I think everyone should be in control of their own data, their own assets, and really that's what this movement is all about. And what the question is intending is that the enterprises sort of still have the power in that situation. And what I think the enterprises will be able to do is actually create better services for us to own our own assets. So there are a lot of startups or opportunities in the spaces when you're dealing with an immutable ledger, something that is replacing third-party trust with mathematical proof. There are a lot of huge opportunities. The first was peer-to-peer money, and that's what Bitcoin was. But you can also do, one of our companies, actually a Spanish company, still called Stampery. They wanted to make it so that you couldn't change code inside of your organization. So for enterprises, that's really, really valuable because you can have, when you update on GitHub, when you update on everything, you can have an immutable ledger of everything, every action that's been done. It's probably, also, by the way, just as far as investment is concerned, so venture capital, like you always want to invest where all the smartest people are running. And I think that the largest number of smartest people are running at, whether we want to call it blockchain or crypto. I call it crypto, I call it Bitcoin. I'm the non-enterprise person on this panel. But it's basically just, there's a lot of brains that are working on really hard problems. And if you're not using the latest technology to solve the hardest problems, like, you're not doing it right. And this is the first time that it's been global. You know, I've been in Spain for like 3 days. So I know everything.
And everybody.
And everybody.
We can switch to Spanish then.
Yeah.
Cool.
But the most fascinating part of traveling around the world is that there's no information arbitrage anymore. So I'm having this exact same conversation in the Silicon Valley at the exact same level as Silicon Valley. It's no different. And I think that's fascinating. That I couldn't imagine 20 years ago, without the internet, without the frictionless communication and the level that it's at today, like, we couldn't have been speaking the same technology language. Now we all are. It's all equally accessible. And that's what the blockchain is doing for money. It's the internet of value rather than the internet of communication.
But
Very good.
back to your question.
Back to the question.
Do you know why any hacker can steal millions of emails from a company?
Tell me.
Because they have it. They have these emails.
Right.
If instead of all this data being held by a company,
Right.
you are able to decentralize all this information, because most of the times, most of the companies, they have
Alex,
a lot of information they don't need.
Even if you decentralize it,
Yep.
it's not a threat to ownership or to control. It's just a distributed way of storing your data. But it doesn't change the ownership, and it doesn't change the control that you have. It makes protection more robust, right? If you are an enterprise.
Nobody changed ownership. Basically, in a self-sovereign identity, we are building a self-sovereign identity, by the way. I, as a citizen, as a person, I have the control of my data. I hold it. It's mine. It's not on the blockchain, by the way. I'm just storing proofs. I'm using cryptography, but I'm not putting information on the blockchain. And it's me that I have control over all my data. Everything. You don't need to have anything. And if you want to have anything about me, just ask for it.
Sure, of course.
Probably I will share it if I have something in return. But that changes the game a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the reasons that some big companies, they are really scared.
So yeah, let's take Facebook as an example. So they had a 50 million.
They hate blockchain, by the
Yeah.
way.
They have oh no, they love it. They have a 50 million email and data breach.
Breach,
Which, by the way, is like 1% of their users.
Right.
So like, be less scared of it than you probably were when you read all the headings.
It's all Spain.
Yeah, no, it's all of Spain.
All of Spain.
But basically all these big corporations, what they've been doing is taking your data and then selling it to the end consumer and the ad networks and these brands. That's just been the business model of the internet forever.
But it's the same, but without paying.
But what the blockchain gives us is optionality for your own data. Like, you might still be fine with sharing your data. In fact, I actually like being targeted on ads. Like, I don't want to be sold something I don't want to be looking at. Like, I'm going to be sold something. It might as well be something weird and geeky that I'd like to buy. But I would at least like that option. And that's what this gives us. This gives us the ability to opt in to selling our data. We could actually net money off of doing that type of thing. So
Let me ask Olga a question. What are the trade-offs in implementing a public versus a private chain for an enterprise?
Well, I think that more than a trend is that depending on the use case, sometimes it has to be a public network. In other cases, it has to be a permission network. It depends on the business, it depends on the industry, it depends on what you want to do. Okay, so I think it is better a public one or it is better a permission one. I think it's just depending on what you want to achieve, you have to use the best for that case. And in fact, and it's an announcement that is from this year, from this week, is the two worlds, that is Ethereum, public, Hyperledger, permission. They have joined together with an agreement. Why? Because it was the future. It was both worlds has to be integrated. At the end, this is going to be networks of networks, and everybody has to be integrated in order to have this global identity or this global possibility to achieve to all the parts. So I think it's not what is the trend. The trend is to join both worlds.
So, by the way, this is like the most debated topic in like deep crypto. So if you're like deep crypto, it's like enterprise evil and like the enterprise blockchain's
bad.
Private blockchain's bad. Pure idealist
Right.
Bitcoin good. And to be fair, like I embody the idealist side, but I do understand value in sort of big corporations innovating for finance. It delivers us a better quality product and service. But what I'll liken it to is the internet. So when the internet came around, there was, I think it was a company called, I think it was 3Com. It was Metcalf. He went around and he was selling the internet to corporations. And he created something called Metcalf's Law. You've probably all heard of it. It's the scale. Like the more nodes that are hooked up to a network, the exponential growth of the value of that network. He used, by the way, he invented it to sell. Like it was a sales equation, not like a technological equation. It just happened to work with network effects. But he was selling to corporations. So how he felt that the world was going to be adopting the internet was through these big corporations. Now, no one talks about the intranet anymore. That was what it was called, the intranet. They would sell an intranet inside of so that people could communicate inside of those big buildings. It was the internet that was the de facto use case. Like, I think that that's the difference, is that I think a lot of people are going to be selling to these big organizations, and everyone's going to realize that the value is when you can branch outside of those organizations, not inside. So that's...
But it's like the training wheels.
Yeah. It's
Right.
Probably they need it.
And there's
and
opportunities, and it's good, and like, it's going to get everyone comfortable with using blockchains.
And
Alex,
probably,
before you go there, I think along that same topic, I wanted to ask you a question. What are the biggest obstacles to overcome in a blockchain implementation in the enterprise?
Fear.
Fear. How about cost? Is it expensive?
Fear is cost, yeah. But sometimes it's not really expensive.
Okay.
I've been working with a few big companies, and sometimes it's like, how much does it cost, this blockchain project? And I see the price and say, no, should be more expensive. Then they hire a consultancy, and then the consultancy they pay a lot of money to the consultants. The consultant pays me then the same amount I say, and it makes no sense at all.
Guys, Alex is making a lot of money on blockchain.
But I could do more.
I get that.
Is everybody aware of that?
Whoa, we
Is
get
everybody
it.
on this?
Yeah.
No, but for
He's
me,
buying lunch, dinner, drinks, the whole thing later on.
they need control of everything. They need to understand everything. They need to be sure of anything. They need to connect to all their legacy systems and lose control.
So
Because
for the corporates that are here, what would be your advice if they were going to implement an enterprise blockchain system? What would be your advice?
Usually what we do is like we go to the CEO and the CTO, and
What would be your advice to these people right
then,
here?
guys, hire me, pay me a lot of money.
How many people here own Bitcoin?
Probably. A lot of them, by the way.
Any crypto.
How many of you are developers?
Awesome.
Coders?
How many people would feel comfortable explaining what Bitcoin is to someone else? There were less people
Yes.
than who owned. That
Yes.
is
Yes.
interesting.
That's obvious, though.
But it's not the same question as like, how do you explain internet? Probably you will have thousands of different answers.
Yeah, it's
Peer-to-peer
insane.
data transmission.
Anyway, back to
Yeah, but now you know who, like, we're educated. Like, this is an education group. This is great.
so.
How's everyone doing?
Do you work
Wait,
at
Alex, going back to the point.
someone working at a big corporation
Yes.
here? Come on, raise your hands. I know a few of you, so please don't be shy.
Who works
or
for a
I
big
will,
company?
I will point at you. Okay.
Who works for an enterprise? Okay.
So,
So
are you using blockchain in your company? In some.
Yeah.
And how did you get there? Who convinced you?
there are no mics.
Usually someone
There
convincing
are
you.
no mics, so they can't answer the questions. But what would be your advice for those people seeking to advise? Aside from hiring you, which is a great piece of news.
Partnering with the community.
Okay.
It's like they are afraid of the community building blockchain, and there are really amazing minds building this kind of open source technology. And at some points, I see like corporate, they look at this community and say these are the geeks, and they don't listen to them too much. And then the geeks, they look at corporate and they say they are evil. But I think we need each other at some kind of point because we have a really amazing technology and we have the capacity to
Because the
reach
geeks
people.
have no money,
Yeah.
and the big corporations have a bunch of money.
So
Let me get Olga's perspective
Well,
from
my-
IBM.
in
What
order
would
to
be your
be
advice?
disruptive, because I think that the first advice is the blockchain is a technology, is a tool in order to make things better, more productive, or more secure. But what is important is to know the business. It's important to know the industry. It's important to know the use case. I believe that here there are many startups, and when we talk about blockchain, I think that the future is not creating crypto monedas. I think that the future is creating solutions for different industries. Solutions that can improve the internal processes of the business, that can create new markets, that can create new business, because when we talk as a community and not just as a corporation, we can do things that perhaps before could be done, for sure, but it was so expensive or so difficult to do that nobody did. But now we have the opportunity to make things that can change things like how the banks are now integrating between them, or how the transportation on the seas and the oceans are changing because everything is being integrated digitally side. So I think that when we talk about blockchain, there are so huge opportunities for many of the startups, new developers, that not only thinking in crypto, but also thinking in any kind of use case.
So we have 2 minutes left. I'd like just to leave all of you to go 30 seconds, 40 seconds. What would you communicate in that, with that headline of cybersecurity and blockchain? What would you like to tell the audience in 30 seconds?
But it just acknowledges, start talking and stop talking and start doing. I just can't wait for the day like we don't have any more blockchain conferences anymore. It's like we don't have internet conferences and we trust the technology. It's like, then just trust the technology, start using it, learn about it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Very good. Adam.
Yeah, I mean, experiment and solve problems, I think, is the most important thing. Like, if I'm speaking to a room for entrepreneurs, like, even big enterprises, like, experiment and solve actual problems. Don't just get excited about the fact that you're dealing with blockchain or technology. This example of banks working together, I think that's such a good example of sort of creating more transparency in an otherwise very non-transparent market. But like, I think it goes beyond that, where banks actually become irrelevant. Like, that's what's exciting about the blockchain. Crypto is going to actually make banks irrelevant. Banks are actually going to have to deliver a better quality service at a lower cost. It's creating innovation where there hadn't been any. These big industries, like, I'm talking to a bunch of enterprises. These big industries, like, people got lazy and they forgot who their customer was. I have great examples of this I can't talk about in 43 seconds. Well, I've been hacked multiple times. I've had bad experiences with banks, and like all of those things would not have happened if blockchain or cryptocurrencies were in existence when they were happening. So, yeah, that's what I'll say. It's
Olga,
like,
please.
things
Closing
really-
remarks.
I would say that blockchain is not just an idea.
Bye.
That blockchain is
I've
a
sold so many of
reality.
them
That
many years ago.
blockchain has come to stay, and I think that we are in the starting days of blockchain, and we will use blockchain in many other things in the future, as we use the phone, or we use internet, or we use other kind of technologies every day.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks. Let's give the panel a round of applause. And